Hey everyone, it's Dan Simitovich, co-host of Deviant. We hope you're getting a lot out of this series about Devon Arthurs and white supremacy. This is part 4 of what will be 5 parts that you're about to listen to. And if you want to support the work we're doing, check out our Patreon. It's at deviantpodcast.com. And as always, follow us on social. We're at deviant.podcast. Just a word of warning, there is some salty language in this show. So, earmuffs, everybody.
Back in our very first episode on this story, we told you about the story of Amanda.
Time makes things better, but time will never heal everything. So I've gotten to the point where I can live with what's happened to me.
You might remember she was headed out for a Friday happy hour when Devon Arthurs walked into her Tampa apartment complex's leasing office and changed everything.
Even today, when I talk about, oh, did you guys hear about that, white supremacist double homicide in Tampa Palms? And they're like, oh, I remember that from a couple years ago. So it's still like big in certain circles. You're not going to outrun that.
Amanda's life has largely returned to normal. But Amanda and her apartment complex at the time represent the kind of everyday, average American people and communities that reckon with the worlds of extremists like Brandon Russell, Devon Arthurs, and all the other voices in the far-right, extremist white supremacy universe. As we said in the beginning, these aren't people and this isn't thinking that exists out on the fringes or in some remote cabin in the woods. It's all right here. The Atomwaffen Division, the extremist group Devon and Brandon were operating out of their apartment, has largely dissipated. But even after the dissipation, the problem still exists. Because what was previously a group aligned behind a leader is now split up as small glowing embers of a movement that hasn't gone anywhere. Here's Luke Baumgartner, research fellow at George Washington University's program on extremism, and Ali Winston, who has covered Devon Arthurs and the extreme far right for years. You heard them both earlier in this series.
What we've seen in the years since Atomwaffen has basically disbanded or disintegrated is that the group structure is no longer a thing. It is lone actors, small cells of 2-3 people that are looking to carry out the same sorts of violence that Atomwaffen really aspired to.
Atomwaffen Division and the base were the last gasps of the, quote, movementarian, the group-based phase of the extreme right, of like the homicidal far right.
The lesson is that the group structure is dead. You won't have Brandon Russell or Devon Arthurs looking to recruit members for a group. Not as often as we saw 6, 7, 8 years ago, or a decade ago, really, with Atomwaffen.
Now, everything centers around kind of loose ideation, propagandists creating videos, imagery, curating social media streams with the intent of getting lone wolf actors to go out and commit mass casualty events. I guess aesthetic legacy of the Atomwaffen Division is far longer than the group's actual life, and that is where they have served as kind of a template for inspiring would-be far-right killers.
That might be one of the more important parts of this entire story. The way it all looks may have changed, but as it has forever, and probably always will, the hate remains. It always finds a way to manifest itself in different ways.
It's not to say that groups won't pop up anymore, but they won't adhere to that structure like they used to. So we're dealing with a new era of radicalization and mobilization to violence for far-right actors.
As we record this, Devon Arthurs is inside the Graceville Correctional Facility in the Florida Panhandle. It's about an hour north of Panama City, and he's slated to be there until 2062. He's 26 years old now, and in his most recent photo, he looks different from his 2017 mugshot. His head is shaved and the youth is gone. What remains, though, is that expression on his face. He still looks very, very angry. And Brandon Russell, leader of the Atomwaffen Division, the would-be terrorist and Devon's mentor, we actually don't know where he is right now. When we last saw him, he was supposed to be in federal prison for a while after planning an attack on Baltimore's electrical grid, Now he's listed as not in custody by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But that's not uncommon, because transfers can and often occur between state and federal facilities. And when it comes to Andrew Onishuk, an Atomwaffen Division member and one of Devon's victims, there's an important point we want to make here. According to his father, Walt, Andrew had plans to move back to Massachusetts right around the time he shot and killed by Devon. We asked Walt for an interview and he declined, but what we do know is what he told reporter Anastasia Dawson of the Tampa Bay Times back in 2017. He said, and I quote, "I can't sugarcoat things and pretend that I know everything Andrew did. But even if he ever looked into neo-Nazi activity in the past, I know without a shadow of a doubt that was not who he was now." It's important to hear from people who have traveled that radicalization pathway we talk about in our last episode. People who know and understand how the gravitational pull of hate, extremism, and white supremacy actually works. And as Andrew's sister, Emily Onishuk, said in her speech to the Eradicate Hate Summit in 2023, trying to do something about it can oftentimes only make it worse.
The tricky thing about all of this is that every step we felt like we took forward to maybe correct something, the further we isolated him from us. Every time I got angry, every time I argued, I wasn't getting any closer to solving the problem. I was just getting closer and closer to losing him forever.
Inside that universe, where the currency is hate and anger, it's called red pilling. Here's Hannah Gaze, journalist and researcher with the Southern Poverty Law Center.
One way that the online right does talk about radicalization is this concept of red pilling. It comes from The Matrix. The creators of The Matrix, I know, are very frustrated about how this term has been adopted by the online right, and frankly, I completely understand that.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
It basically comes from this idea that there's kind of like one moment of awakening. That you see the light, that these ideas are right, that world is against you. It could be, I choose your poison for boogeymen for the radical right. Jews, black people, other ethnic minorities, anything non-white, and like what their specific definition of white is.
The notion of taking the red pill, when the world as you see it melts away, and the world as it actually is comes into focus, is for many the defining moment. It marks the transformation into a radical, and it happens for Tyler DiPeppe too.
I felt like I had forbidden knowledge that the rest of the population couldn't accept. And it got to the point where if I was talking to somebody and they weren't following the same thought pattern that I was just like, okay, you're an idiot.
We're all wired differently. Some of us are wired for good, some of us are wired for bad. But a select few step outside all of society's boundaries. From Cold Open Media, this is Deviant, Homicide, Hate, and American Extremism, Part 4. Welcome back to Deviant. I'm Andrew Iden. If you haven't made sure to listen to the previous episodes about this case, you're going to want to go back and do that. When it comes to all the themes we talk about in this series, there are a number of questions that only a unique few are actually qualified to answer. We talk to reporters, researchers, and experts about all of this, and about how this kind of radicalization happens, but there's also value in trying to get the perspective of someone who has actually been radicalized. And that's what we're doing in this episode. In 2020, Tyler DiPeppe and a few other members of Atomwaffen Division are charged by federal prosecutors after they attempt to leave Nazi propaganda at the home of journalists, all as a means of intimidation, a scare tactic. In 2021, Tyler, who was 21 years old at the time, pleads guilty to a count of conspiracy to mail threatening communications and to commit cyberstalking. The judge in the case issues a sentence of time served, which means Tyler avoids prison time. Tyler, who is transgender, had an incredibly difficult childhood, and the judge, according to the Associated Press, says at the hearing, quote, None of us have suffered the difficult situation this defendant has endured as a result of his gender identity confusion. Enough is enough. Tyler, who is no longer a member of Atomwaffen Division and is in the process of de-radicalization, is happy to tell us his story, to help us understand and hear in as clear terms as possible how the radicalization pathway works.
My upbringing wasn't really great. My mom was always really racist. And she would tell me all the time, like, when I get older, don't go into the city because there's a lot of black people there. And it's dangerous because of that. And then my dad, he was kind of mostly racist without realizing that he was racist at the start. And then it started going further and further to him just being kind of overtly racist. But sometimes he would just say, oh, well, I'm just saying a joke. Stop taking it so seriously.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's probably a huge part of the story of how these things unfold, right? And I'd like for you, if you can, as much as you're willing, to talk to us about that, so we have that as sort of a pretext as we lead into the rest of your story.
Oh, I mean, my mom has done things to me that like are actually unspeakable. Like I cannot talk about them publicly. It's really bad. Neglected paying attention to me a lot. Grew up starving a lot when I lived with her. There was one night where I kept begging her to cook me some dinner while she was hanging out with her friends outside. And she was like, no, I'm not going to do it, basically. And my bedtime was literally in 30 minutes. And I was like, well, if I don't eat now, then I'm not going to eat the rest of the night. And I'm going to wake up hungry again. And so while she was talking to her friends, I was like, okay, well, if you're not going to pay attention to me, and I was 7 years old at this time, I just put my hand right in the bonfire and got her to freak out and then get my stepdad to pay attention to me. And he ended up cooking me dinner because he figured out why I did it. But like, even all the time when I lived with them, like my stepdad would get shot at a lot because he was a cop in the city and we lived like right outside the city. And my mom would just sit there and keep reinforcing the same idea that like black people are bad because they're shooting at your stepdad. And it took years for my dad to get custody of me, but then he eventually did. And I thought things were going to be better living with him, which they were in a lot of ways, but my stepmom was just fucking terrible and kind of did the same shit with like not feeding me, would just throw things at me when she was angry. Never actually hit me, but threw things at me all the time. Oh, my bad. That was wrong. She did hit me once. We got into a huge fight about my sister's grades, but she tried to hit my sister, and I said, no, I'm not going to let that fly. So I ended up fighting her. Yeah, that whole time when she was around was fucking terrible. And like my dad he wasn't home often, mainly because like he worked in the car dealership and they only get paid by sale. So he was literally at work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I didn't see him often until he got a manager position somewhere when I was like 12 and 13. That's when I started seeing him more. So I didn't know my dad too well for a long time.
So you've obviously established that there's a foundation here of dysfunction and, broken home, essentially, for lack of a better term. When does that and your mom's views and racist views, when does that sort of manifest itself in you and start pushing you to not just thinking about these things, but into action?
As a kid, like I would always see black people as bad and avoid them like the plague. Like I'm talking when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, I would try to avoid them at all costs just because of the things that my mom has said to me when I was younger. Like it solidified, unfortunately. I don't know. I remember when my dad got custody of me, and I noticed that the kids in my school were not all white living with him, and it struck me as odd, and I thought it was wrong. And I was like 9 years old at the time, and I was just like, "Oh, that's not right. Why are they putting me around animals?" Basically, is the mindset I had.
When did you sort of become engaged in that community and engaged in conversation and activism, for lack of a better term, with other white supremacists, neo-Nazis, etc.?
Didn't actually start talking to them until 2016 online and like different threads and all that. It was mostly through Instagram. Some of it was on Tumblr, surprisingly enough.
So what were the conversations you were having online in that early period when you sort of were first wading into these communities?
Oh, so a lot of people talked about religion and like the different white nationalist religions, and I was looking into that and talking about that because I actually do like learning about religion. So that was like an interest of mine that kind of pulled me in. There's also the whole meme of Reed Siege that was around about that time to get people to actually read Siege. And then I did, and then I ended up talking to people about Siege a lot.
Just for the listener, Siege is a book written by James Mason, who is a huge figure in the American white supremacy neo-Nazi movement. And can you sort of describe Siege for us and sort of what role it plays in this community?
Well, I mean, if you know the Turner Diaries, it's like a way to make you do action, take action in your own hands. More of like, if it's not going to be you as a group targeting a specific other group, then it's going to be a lone wolf style illustration on the book to teach you how to do it in real life. Very subversive way to do it.
Yeah. And so when you say how to do it, what are you referring to?
They're guidelines on how to commit a shooting or terrorist attack in general,
Yeah.
to take down another group or just to kind of incite fear whenever you go outside, like you as an individual.
So you read Siege and you're kind of talking to folks, online in these communities. When did you first wade into the Atomwaffen Division and what that group was and that community?
That wasn't until probably around 2019 that I actually was in contact with them and like unknowingly, and then ended up joining them. But if you're talking about when I kind of got into the community, it was more so 2017 by the end of my like high school experience, whatever you want to call it. And I started getting more lonely, and I wasn't sure if I was going to college or not. And then I ended up going to college and then realizing that like a lot of my high school friends are just kind of moving on. Yeah, I was getting a little isolated around then and started talking to these people online more. And it kind of pushed me further and further right.
I found that in a lot of conversation that I've had with people who have read about, researched, and sort of, become parts of these communities, loneliness and isolation is oftentimes a really important factor.
Yeah,
Do you get to radicalization without loneliness and isolation?
I don't think so. From a personal experience, I don't think so. 2019, I moved down to Florida with my best friend, and we ended up staying with my mom. And I haven't talked to my mom since I was 8. I was trying to give her another chance when I was like 18 or 19. We tried to just work and then just save money to go to college down there. My mom ended up kicking him out, and he was my only friend down there. And then all my other friends were up in New Jersey, so it wasn't like I had anywhere to go or anything to do. So I was kind of trapped in my room after work every day, just sitting on the computer, talking to these people. And it kept me away from talking to normal people, I suppose. And then anytime I actually would talk to one of my old friends, it was about Nazi shit, and they didn't want to hear it, so they didn't talk to me. So it was really easy for me to isolate myself without knowing too.
Right, because anytime you're actually out speaking to people and communicating with people in sort of the normal real world, it is...
I sounded like a lunatic.
Right.
Yeah, so like who wants to talk to the guy that believes there's this religion where the only good people are white? Like nobody wants to talk to you, you freak, you know?
Yeah.
That's how it came off. Like I sounded crazy.
Which only perpetuates the me versus them idea, right?
Yeah, it definitely throws you down the rabbit hole.
I imagine you sort of have to double down and you commit to this. I don't even know if cause is the right word, but like, how deep into this did you go?
Oh, I felt like I had forbidden knowledge that the rest of the population couldn't accept. And it got to the point where if I was talking to somebody and they weren't following the same thought pattern that I was just like, okay, you're an idiot. There's no use for you. And eventually I will be the one that blows your head off. And it was a done deal like that. It would seal in my brain like that.
Were you willing to commit violence for the group, for your beliefs? Like, was that something that was like, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when?
Yep. It was exactly that. And I mean, admittedly, if the FBI caught me a lot sooner, they would have seen that I was doing a lot worse things than what I actually got in trouble for. Because I did commit many acts of violence. It's just they waited until I did something else. Honestly, there's still a lot I have to make up for, and what they arrested me for was nothing compared to what I did do.
We'll get to the arrest in a sec, but when you look back now, describe for me sort of like what your day was like. Like, are you online 15 hours a day? Are you like having calls with people?
I mean, my day personally, I would wake up at 4:30, get ready for work, be at work about like 5:30, work until 3 p.m., come home, work out for a little bit, probably like an hour, shower, jump on the computer, start talking to these people. I would join like live streams with other Nazis on Instagram, drink a lot. Then I would get off the live stream for a while. I would call one of the guys in the group, talk to them for a little bit. We'd be texting all night on the group chat, and then just go to bed, wake up the next day, do the same thing. But on the weekends is when I would hang out with the guys because I used to have because I worked in a factory, so I had a 3-day weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would actually drive across the state to hang out with these guys. And I lived in Florida at the time, so that was quite the drive. I had to read a lot of Nazi literature, and there's like subgroups that you can be a part of, and everybody kind of takes a side in the movement. Sorry, I should say quote unquote movement because that's what it's called, but when you're in that group. So, like, a lot of people can figure out basically your personality type through what you've learned and what you've held on to.
Tyler, at this point in his life, has the seeds of racism and hate firmly planted. He is in this world. He's red-pilled. He's part of the cause. And the 2017 arrests of Devon Arthurs and Brandon Russell are moments that help to inspire Tyler to join the Atomwaffen Division.
That was like, oh, wait, look at these guys are so well prepared. They're actually doing something, as opposed to everybody else I've been talking to online who hasn't been doing anything to make a change. And then in a weird way, I was thinking, well, because I'm trans and people already don't value my work because of being trans, why would it matter if I died for this group or any group for that matter? Because I wanted to join Atomwaffen, but I was like, there's no way I'm going to get into there. So I'll have to find another, pathway.
So you first become aware of Atomwaffen Division in 2017 when Brandon's arrested, which is obviously, on the heels of Devon's arrest and him killing Jeremy and Andrew in that apartment. Did those arrests, I guess for lack of a better term, it sounds like the arrest to you, there was a bit of admiration to that. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. In that time, I was like, oh, they're doing something. Good for them. Not like, oh, these idiots got arrested for doing something stupid. No, when they especially mentioned, oh, they had all these bombs and the police weren't aware and it was enough to blow up Tampa, I was like, okay. So they know more, they know how to keep it a secret from the police. It's just this one asshole, the asshole being Devon. And like I said, I'm going off of what my brain was thinking at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, this one asshole had to ruin it all. They were so close to success.
Success in your mind being the carrying out of the bombs and the explosives and doing whatever they were going to do.
Exactly.
So when Brandon's arrested and you see this, and this is sort of I don't know if rallying cry is the right word, but I'll use it. It's sort of, it galvanizes you, right? What is your next step in terms of the movement, your participation in it, your engagement with it, the actions that you take? Do you sort of ratchet up your participation?
I definitely try to reach out to more people and form something and try to be a part of it more actively. Like I said, it didn't really get anywhere until 2018 when I joined the skinhead group and then started forming it in Florida. But it started taking nosedive in 2019 when I actually was reached out to join Atomwaffen and then do everything I did.
This is the moment that Tyler, for all intents and purposes, raises the stakes. And it's a similar story to a lot of the other young men, like Devon Arthurs, like Brandon Russell, who at some point aren't content to just kind of sit and wallow in their own racist echo chamber. They move beyond just posting on the internet and talking about all the things they think are wrong with the world. Words become actions. Next time on Deviant, Tyler's radicalization pathway continues. I'm trying to figure out, was there a willingness to die for the cause, or did you just not care?
It was both, but it was more so I will do this thing and die for it.
And what he's willing to do escalates.
One guy that I knew that I was talking to, his brother did kill somebody and got away with it, and he was teaching me how to do it. So that's what I fell into.
This episode of Deviant is written by me, Andrew Iden. Dan Semitovich is story editor and producer, and Clark Goldman provides editorial support. Original scoring by Shuvo Sir. Sales, marketing, and distribution support comes from our partners at Gemini 13. Deviant is a production of Cold Open Media.